Welcome to the Irish NFL Show's bank holiday recap of the Week 8 action brought to you by QuinnBet. I hope you've been able to take it handy and put the feet up over the weekend and that you enjoyed the extra hours rest that we got into the bargain as well. Not you, Kieran Boyle. Sorry, yours is coming in a couple of weeks' time. It's in the post, my friend. We never rest during football season, so we've been busy watching all the games and debating all the talking points, from the referees dropping the ball on the tush push to Justin Fields' bravery in bearing his soul after being thrown under the bus by New York Jets owner Woody Johnson, who yet again proved he knows nothing about football. We have just one game remaining tonight as the Commanders go on the road. They're 11.5-point dogs in Kansas City and facing the Chiefs. We'll keep an eye on that one for you and enjoy it if you're watching it tonight. Slightly earlier time, an hour earlier, with that hour still in our favour on this side of the Atlantic. We kick off, though, with the Sunday night game between the Packers and the Steelers. It was not a revenge game, said Aaron Rodgers in the week leading up to the game, as his Steelers came to town to Acrisure Stadium, or his Packers rather former Packers came to town to take on the Steelers in Acrisure Stadium. It certainly wasn't a revenge game, and if it was a revenge game for Jordan Love. Not that he has any reason to dislike Aaron Rodgers. Kieran O'Donovan, you're the resident cheesehead. Couldn't really have gone much better for Green Bay in terms of the finish, trailing at halftime, and the Steelers well in it at that point. But we were talking in our preview show last week about the vulnerabilities that the Bengals had exposed in the Steelers. And, we were saying if there was a coach in the league who knew how to scheme things up to take advantage of those vulnerabilities, it was Matt LaFleur. And so it proved. Packers offense really dominant on the day. They probably could have won by more realistically. They won pulling away in the end.
Yeah, it was all love from Rodgers during the week, and it was all love, especially in the second half last night. Look, this was the kind of performance that I've been harping on about, that we needed to see as a Packers fan, I guess, over the last few weeks, where they've been kind of jittery and they've been stuttering to put teams away that they really should have been handling. We saw an awful lot, a lot last night that you could really hang your hat on and say, no, this team now, if they can play like that consistently, they can play with the big boys. But they started off slow. The Steelers got up and down the field, and where you give the Packers defense credit in the first half is that they kept them to field goals, I guess, instead of touchdowns. And then they just got rolling in the second half, and in no small part through Tucker Kraft. And I have to give mention to Tucker Kraft on National Tight Ends Weekend. I know you hate that holiday, Connor, but it was a real coming out party for Tucker Kraft, who's now leading the Packers in yards, receptions, and touchdowns.
My freaking birthday get renamed Tight Ends Day.
Yeah, apologies.
I'm not having that.
he was incredible, and he's become that go-to. Like, I think we can safely say now we can speak about him in the same breath as the likes of your Tyler Warren. I'm thinking of the Cardinals tight end Trey McBride. Yeah, these guys.
Surprised you forgot him after he torched your Packers for 2 touchdowns.
I know, but like these top level tight ends that can do everything, and he referred to himself, I guess, and the rest of the tight end fraternity as the Swiss Army knife position, and he certainly does that. He's excellent in running pass blocking situations, and he gets out in the flat, and he just. He's as he said himself, he gets north-south as quickly as he can, and he wants to go past or through as many people as possible.
I think there's an element with Tucker Kraft, and I'm not taking anything away from him. As you say, like he deserves to be mentioned in the same breath as your Sam Laporta, Brock Bowers, as you say, Trey McBride, Tyler Warren, now the new kid on the block. He's right in there. But there's an element here of fear not the weapon, but the hand that wields it, and that it's a delight what LaFleur is able to do with all of the weapons at his disposal. Maybe a year or two ago, you would have said, is there a really standout wide receiver in Green Bay? Do you need that WR1? Christian Watson, who was back, of course, yesterday and made his contribution, was threatening to be that guy for a time. Then maybe it's Romeo Doubs, or maybe it's Dontavian Wicks, and you're not really sure. But now you look at the variety and the hydra that is the Packers offense, and there was a particular 4th and short where they ended up throwing the ball, swing pass to Kraft, who picked up the first down. But the Steelers are looking at the play action fake to Josh Jacobs, and they have to bite on that because Jacobs is such a threat in those situations. So what do you do? Like, you got, Packers receivers who are well drilled in blocking, and, much like the Kyle Shanahan and the Sean McVay offense, they work their receivers hard. Doesn't matter if you're catching the ball, you're putting in a shift on every single play, you're blocking, and you got to pick your poison. And it's a lose-lose situation for defenses in some of those scenarios. When you see it in full flow, it's very difficult to stop.
Yeah, and you mentioned Christian Watson, and he might just be the final piece of that offensive puzzle, because, and I was one of these guys who probably would have been okay with them, trading him away at a certain point, because I just felt he was too injury prone. But he hasn't been resting on his laurels. He got bigger and stronger. You could see how physical he was last night, in some of those balls that he
set the edge brilliantly on the Jacobs touchdown run in the first half as well. Does all the unfussy, untidy work and blocking as well.
Yeah, and it was a real step-up game for Jordan Love as well last night. I mean, he had 360 yards. You can't go without mentioning him. It was a really mature, and in fairness, Aaron Rodgers credited him after the game. He said it was a patient performance by Jordan Love because he didn't have it all his own way in the first half. And it was one of these games. I was texting a friend of mine at halftime, another Packers fan, and we were saying, God, this looks like one that could get away from us again. But in fairness, he waited and he waited and he took what was coming to him. And I've been critical of Love in the last few weeks to say he's been impatient and he's given up those costly moments. But it was a clean game from him last night, and he's a guy that's probably rising in the ranks of the quarterbacks. But I'd still fear from the Packers' point of view, there is that weakness in the secondary. It didn't cost them last night, but they're still giving up that long ball. And I haven't even mentioned Micah Parsons and what a disruptive force he was last night, especially coming into the fourth quarter. He was incredible. He got his trademark sack, but he was a nightmare for Rodgers all night. And complimenting the likes of Rashawn Gary, who got the first sack of the night as well. He's doing exactly what he was brought in to do. But it's that secondary that's kind of, can at times make it pointless what Parsons is doing, because even though they're forcing this third and long, teams are able to throw up a prayer, and they're just finding people absolutely wide open, and not just busted coverages, but you had a panicked play on defense by Keyshawn Nixon, and he bumped he gave away this hugely unnecessary DPI. It's just calm heads are needed back in the secondary. And I think if the Packers want to go deep, I think they really need to consider some kind of a trade offer for a cornerback, because Nate Hobbs hasn't been the answer for them. So look, if they want to be in that upper echelon, if they want to be playing late in January, early February, they need to consider some kind of a trade at that position. But a really, really, obviously, an overall great display last night. Really positive performance from the Packers.
Kieran Boyle, if we're talking about teams playing into January, the Steelers certainly would expect to be there, as they have been for the last couple of seasons. But it looks like the more things change, the more they stay the same. They bring in Rodgers, they bring in DK Metcalf. They're looking to add spark to an offense, thinking that they have the championship caliber defense. Suddenly that defense starting to look old and slow in big spots. And it's a worrying scenario for the Steelers, who are still top of the AFC North, but they're staring down the barrel, it seems to me right now, looking at it in week 8, unless things start changing, of another 9-8, 10-7 type season, go to the playoffs and one and done.
Well, that's what it's trending towards. And the Ravens winning, they missed a trick last night, not getting the win. Everyone's kind of gaining ground on them now. But yeah, exactly like you say. I mean, it's almost like a carbon copy of last year and even the year before. Offense is flat to deceive. I mean, Rodgers he was fine. 219 yards, 2 touchdowns, a couple of sacks, but he was okay. But when DK Metcalf is only getting 55 yards, Jalen Warren's only getting 62 on the ground, then you just got to start looking at the defense. And the defense for the Steelers is more the thing that sticks out to me more than the offense of the Steelers. I mean, that's a loaded gun right there. And they were all ready to go for the postseason this year and make a longer run than just a wild card exit. There's something going on there. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's too many superstars, too many egos going on. But when you got a defense with the likes of Cam Hayward, Patrick Queen, Alex Highsmith, Slay, Joey Porter Jr., I mean, that should be lights out. That should be one of the top 5 defenses in the whole league. But they struggled mightily last night. I mean, it was great to see Watson come back after that injury. And, the Packers dealt with them pretty easily. It wasn't, after coming back from that halftime deficit. But to me, the biggest story is the Steelers defense and not gelling and not putting up enough pressure. I mean, you can't hang your hat on TJ Watt and expect everybody else to just kind of row behind. There's something going on there, and they're going to have to fix it quick because, yeah, they'll probably, they're 4-3. They'll probably end up, like you said, 10-7.
Is it partly though, Kieran, schematic? Like I was looking at the Bengals game, and Packers obviously very different offense and at a very different stage of development, but it seems to me that Tomlin is stubborn about some of the traits. Like Jalen Ramsey got torched time and time again last week. Like they wouldn't double Jamar Chase, and they paid the price for it, and they didn't seem to know They still don't seem to have an answer for those quick slants and those throws over the middle that the likes of a Jordan Love and a Joe Flacco can hit all day long. There are plenty of quarterbacks who are going to be able to take advantage of that, and plenty of offenses are going to take advantage of it. I don't think it's just personnel. I do think it's vulnerabilities that have been exploited in Tomlin's defense.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk about divas in the defense, but we all know Jalen Ramsey can be a little bit, I don't know, smells himself, as the phrase goes. He likes to smell himself. I mean, if he doesn't feel like it, if he's not up for the game, then he'll go anonymous, and he'll have a couple of games. He'll have 2 or 3, sacks, a couple of picks, and then there'll be games where he's anonymous. I just wonder what goes on in the back room there, what's going on with that defensive unit, because I think before the season, everyone had them pegged. Oh, this is going to be a different year for the Steelers. The defense is loaded. They've got Rodgers. They're bringing in Metcalf. It's not going to be the same old, but it's trending exactly like the same old. And the ground game wasn't phenomenal yesterday either from the Steelers. So I'd be a little concerned, and seeing how this will pan out over the next, because November is the time when everybody eats in the league. This is when you start separating from everybody else. So we'll see what happens with the Ravens over the next couple of weeks, and what this loss will mean for the Steelers.
The New York Jets finally got their first win of the season. We were worried about whether they might end up being one of these historically bad teams the way that the season has been going, but they got off the mark against the Bengals, who pretty much are going to have to put a cap on this season now. It seems like their slim playoff hopes very much looking like they're hanging by an even thinner thread now after this weekend. 39-38 win for the Jets. A word, Kieran O'Donovan, before we get into the game itself, for the way that Justin Fields handled his business last week. We talked about his limitations as a quarterback. I've seen them up close during his time in Chicago, and the good and the bad of Fields. And he was thrown under the bus in a spectacular way by the Jets owner, Woody Johnson, earlier this week. And to me, it's kind of redolent of a depressing trend in the world at large. And I'm not. Don't worry, I'm not going to lean too hard into the political here. But Woody Johnson is a wealthy, powerful guy with wealthy, powerful friends, and very well-connected, wealthy, powerful friends. I think what we're talking about here. Who seems to adhere to the strong man theory, and shoots his mouth off, and has no problem leaning on people who aren't as wealthy or powerful as he is. And let it not be said that Justin Fields is a shrinking violet or is a member of the underclass. He paid $5 million this year, $15 million signing bonus. So let's just contextualize this. But I do feel that was a really shitty thing to do to Justin Fields, and certainly not helping the New York Jets, the organization that Woody Johnson owns, and you would think he would have its interests at heart. But Fields spoke very emotionally after the game, and I thought really well about. Didn't mention Woody Johnson, didn't call out what happened, but we all knew what he was talking about when he said that he was at a real low point last week. He said at one point he was in tears in his bedroom, basically trying to get himself together and praying and relying on his teammates for support. And he's called out his sister and his stepmom in particular, who got in touch with him. And I thought, good for him for representing for that, because it's not something that you see men in his position do very often, like in a very testosterone-driven alpha male environment, which you could probably do with much more of a female touch than it has at times. It's great to see a guy call out the women in his life as supporting him through, and call out the struggles that he had mentally with what went on, and he gutted it out. And fair play to them, the Jets got the win. I just thought that that should be something to be said in 2 lessons in leadership last week. One, a pretty classless display, and one, a guy letting his skills and his talents do the talking. And I don't think Justin Fields is going to get a starting job in the NFL after this season. He's going to be a career backup, and he'll be well compensated for that. But I really enjoyed seeing him come out the right end of that, because I thought he deserved it after the way his week started, and I thought the Jets deserved their victory and were full value for that 39-38 win in the end.
Yeah, and as limited and as inconsistent as Justin Fields' play has been, I think the signs, and we've spoken about this before, the signs point to the fact that Justin Fields is a good guy. His teammates have backed him. His fans have backed him. I've never heard him say the wrong thing in the public domain. And as whatever his salary is, he's a human being, and he's a vulnerable human being, and no different to the rest of us. And he must have been in such a dark place after essentially his boss came out in front of the world, publicly, humiliated him as he did. And it's easy to forget that these owners, these billionaire owners that that own these teams, they're playing with people's lives week on week, and it's they're so far removed from reality in terms of in terms of what constitutes crossing the line and what doesn't. it can be forgotten. I'm sure it can be forgotten, and I don't think Woody Johnson will have lost any sleep over the last week either. But yeah, as you said, I 100% agree with everything you said. I mean, there's absolutely, it's nothing only a positive thing for a guy to come out and wear his heart in his sleeve like he did. There was no point in shying away from it. I mean, it was what it was, and yeah, it's only fitting that he came out and he had a really good performance, and they got the win. And on the back of I suppose the emotion that went on with in New York or New Jersey with the passing of Nick Mangold as well, there was obviously going to be a push in the Jets community, and it's amazing how emotion can play into sport, and how you can get a kick wherever it comes from. And I'm not to say that that's the only reason that the Jets won last night, or they're the only reason that the Jets won last night. The Jets came to play, and they did what they, what a lot of their players have been capable of. We saw Breece Hall have a huge night last night. They got the run game going, and I mean, they put up 39 points in a comeback victory. What was it, a 3-score game that they had to come back from? You saw Aaron Glenn really gutsy call to go for two points. That analytics play that we all hear about, going for 2 when you're 2 touchdowns behind gives you the chance to go ahead if you do level it up with the second touchdown. From a purely football point of view, I found it a very frustrating result, because you're talking about a team that was, is going to be irrelevant at the end of the day, is going to be picking high in the draft. And what they did was they cut the legs right out from underneath the Bengals, who were just hoping to stay afloat until Joe Burrow came back. And to be fair, it didn't matter whether it was Joe Burrow or Joe Flacco on the field last night. That wasn't the reason that the Bengals lost that game. It's the Bengals' leaky defense. It's the defense. It's the same as it was last season, same as the season before. When they needed it, they just couldn't get a stop. I mean, they led this game, what was it, 17-3 at one point. They were completely in control after the first quarter. Joe Flacco was slinging it. They got the run game going. Chase Brown was flying, and complemented by P. Ryan as well, who we don't mention too often on the show. I mean, there was absolutely nothing with the Bengals offense. They put up 38 points. And if Joe Burrow did the same thing and they lost by 1, you wouldn't be blaming it on the offense either. It was just when they needed to, I suppose, when the offense needed to get that one last drive going, they stalled. I think Flacco had Yoshi Voss about millimeters away from making a catch when they had that. I was fully actually convinced that Flacco was going to take him down and ruin the Jets' night and get that go-ahead field goal to finish it. But no, look, a credit to the Jets. It's very rare we see an 0-17 team. We're not going to see one this season either. I don't think they're going to win too many more games on top of that. The Bengals still have hope, because nobody's running away with that AFC North. They all seem to be shooting themselves in the foot, but you'd wonder what kind of a kick you're going to get from the Ravens now, and whether the Steelers can push on. So the Bengals aren't dead and buried, but that was a real opportunity lost last night.
Kieran Boyle, from the Jets to your Jets of the South, the Falcons, who did what the Falcons have done all this season and backed up a really strong performance and an offensive explosion with an absolute dud against the Miami Dolphins, who finally showed some signs of life.
Yeah, and there they are. There's the Jets. You never know who's going to show up. But in fairness, they, Penix was out. Drake London was out. So, they're kind of playing behind the 8 ball from the start. But again, this is a team that you never know. I mean, again, we talked about the Steelers and the talent they have on defense. The talent that the Falcons have on offense. Granted, they were missing some key pieces yesterday, but we saw them against the Panthers get blanked. And this was just a situation of a team coming out and saying, F it, we got nothing else to lose. Let's just go out there. We're in a dome, perfect weather conditions. Let's just sling the ball. And that's what Tua did. I mean, I saw something about him waking up with a sty in his eye, or something went wrong with his eye, which led to the visor being worn. And now that's the good luck charm that they're talking about. But the Dolphins are capable of this when you look at the talent they have on the offensive side. I mean, with Jalen Waddle, and Devin Achane, that's 2 studs you can hang your hat on, who are definitely going to give you points in a game. But I don't know which is worse. Is it the Falcons' performance, or is it the fact that the Dolphins have put up 34 and now they're still 2-6, but they're kind of ruining their draft stock too, because I'm sure their GM's got one eye on April next year. But I mean, it's the thing with the Falcons. You still have Algier out there. You had enough weapons and enough pieces in that team to at least make it competitive. And the fact that the Dolphins put up 34, I mean, touchdowns from Waddle, Lashane, Malik Washington, even Ollie Gordon. He's spreading the ball left, right, and center. He was enjoying himself. The noise of last week, all the players only meeting stuff was forgotten about. McDaniel looked relaxed and happy, and that's the power of a win in the NFL. No matter how insignificant it may be, whether it's in August or whether it's in February. I mean, it's a win makes everybody feel better. It eases all the tensions and all the problems that are going on, at least for a couple of days anyway. But Falcons find themselves now 3-4. Tampa with a win yesterday, they're moving further ahead. The Jots are doing what the Jots do. And, with the Dolphins, they'll probably go out and have 35 hung on them next week. So, you never know with that team. But it was nice to see Tua. We talked about Fields kind of coming back from a rough week. Tua's been having a rough season. A lot of slander, a lot of people saying that he's not good enough. He's not up to lead this team. He won't be there next year. His skills are diminishing, et cetera, et cetera. So nice to see him get a win. It's nice to see some of these guys who've been downtrodden so long. I mean, not just this year, but for somebody like Tua, the last couple of weeks have been brutal. It's nice to see them get a win.
Kind of like Fields, another guy who, we are not going to be sparing in any criticism we have if he's not showing up in the way that he should for a QB1 in the NFL. But he's never come across as anything other than one of the good guys in the league and someone who really tries hard to show leadership. I got a bit burned in the things that he said in that press conference a couple of weeks ago about the players only meeting, as you said. But it was clear to me that his heart was in the right place and he's trying to jolt his teammates into something like a performance. And I was pleased for him and for them that they did get that.
Yeah, I mean, they shut down Bijan Robinson. I mean, very few teams can say they can do that. This is a guy we're talking about who's probably another concussion away from hanging up his cleats. So for him, I mean, if he's probably had that shot, go out there and enjoy yourself because this could be the last game you play. And that's a reality for somebody like Tua. I don't think anyone's, believing that he's going to be back in Miami next year along with McDaniel. I think they're going to need wholesale changes, but nice performances across the board, offensively and shutting down Bijan Robinson, who's been an absolute monster. That's very credible too on a defense that has not been exactly lights out. Now, if that game was outdoors in 50 degrees and wind and rain, probably be a different outcome, but it wasn't. So I'll give the Dolphins their kudos. A nice win for them, and it'll take the heat off of McDaniel until at least probably Tuesday.
Kieran O'Donovan, the Bills after a bye are an absolute lock in the NFL. Sean McDermott knows what he's doing. He's one of those coaches who uses the week off well. Josh Allen came out, and for those who know, they'll know that Josh Allen's married to Haley Steinfeld, who had a starring role in Pitch Perfect 2, one of my favorite films, which actually features the Green Bay Packers, as you know, of course.
I'll have to watch it.
But Josh Allen absolutely pitch perfect in this performance, and the Bills hung a big loss on the Panthers.
Yeah, pitch perfect, and it's funny, like this is a game we saw very little of because it just got away from the Panthers. There wasn't obviously much jeopardy in it as it
was less red zone than dead zone. It was just it was one of those ones that was just tucked away nice and early. But you said Josh Allen was pitch perfect and he only threw for 163 yards, but he had what, 3 rushes for 7 yards and two touchdowns. But this was the James Cook show. He had over 200 yards on the ground last night, and I was, as a fantasy owner of James Cook, I was absolutely delighted. But that's it. It's death, taxes, and the Bills coming off a bye. That's they're the guarantees in life at the moment. And look, the Bills were probably shipping a bit of unfair criticism to say that they were one of these teams that was overrated or that might fall away or might slip away. But look, it was another reminder that they're going to have a lot to say in the AFC this season still. It was one of those, we call it, we say it an awful lot, a get right game, and that's what they did. They got right. They took care of business, and in that division, they're going to have to because the Patriots are right there with them, and it looks like as the weeks go on, the Patriots are going to stay with them unless anything changes drastically. I mean, we've got two teams. This is going to be a ding dong battle to the end of the AFC East, and it's we're all here for it. It's fantastic. But no, look, it was Josh Allen, James Cook, and the Old Reliables last night. Great win to get them right, and the Carolina Panthers who have really punched above their weight this season. It's probably not a game that too many would have expected them to win, but it was a real knockout early on, and obviously Andy Dalton starting. Bryce Young was he a late withdrawal?
I don't think I heard it till late in the week anyway, but he mightn't have had too many opportunities to prepare for that game, and they just couldn't get it going. Ted McMillan had a nice game. I think he was close on 100 yards, but that was about it.
All four teams, of course, won in the AFC East. We'll get to the team atop of the NFC East after this quick break.
You know great odds, you're in control, you always bet responsibly, and you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet. Build your own unique football bets with Create a Bet. Winning team, first goal scorer, number of goals, the possibilities are endless. And with a 4-star Trustpilot customer service rating, why not give QuinnBet a shot? QuinnBet, we bet you love it.
Kieran O'Donovan, 2 weeks ago, we saw Cam Scadabo and Jackson Dart have their coming out party at MetLife against the Eagles when they downed the Birds in a famous primetime game. Unfortunately, from a Giants perspective, not only did that not repeat itself over the weekend, but Scadabo dealt a horrific blow, like a really damaging injury for him. One of those ones you hate to see, and viewer discretion advised if you're going to look at that clip. He'll gut it out, and I'm sure he'll be back. And guy wanted to walk off the field. God knows how he had that in him. He's clearly made a different stuff. But there's a couple of talking points from this game, and I know we don't want to get into the refs changing the results, but there were a couple of really tough calls that went against the Giants, and in particular the one on the tush push. I heard Kayvon Thibodeau talking about it after the game, and it's kind of hard to argue with them because it's heads we win, tails you lose with the Eagles on the tush push. They either get the ball over and get it surging and get the yard that they need on the first push, and if they don't, they're on a second surge, and the refs allow the second surge. And on this occasion, the second surge results in Kayvon Thibodeau ripping the ball out from Jalen Hurts' hands, and in any person's language, that looked to be a fumble. Only the refs ruled that the play was dead on forward progress, and it's not a reviewable play for various reasons. I've seen Brian Daboll lose his shit on the sidelines a couple of times this season for various reasons, many of them of his own making, but you had to identify and had to relate to him in that particular instance because it's just a ridiculous call. Like, it's one thing for the league to keep the tush push in, and I've kind of supported that position in the end, and that I believe that the Eagles' ingenuity should be rewarded because it's within the rules of the game. But if it's not going to be refereed properly, you're just not giving teams a chance at all. That was, or could have been, a crucial turnover at that point in the game. I'm not sure it would have changed the results, but it would have made things a lot more interesting than they turned out to be.
Yeah, and I think it was at Brian Daboll. I was worried for his headset. He had his headset in his hand at one point in that game. I don't know, was it for that decision or another call? And I thought it was just about to be cracked in two. But you say it mightn't have affected the outcome of the game, but there is a kind of a feeling of a butterfly effect because I think it's not short. It's not too long. Was it after that play, after that fumble, that Cam Scadabo got injured? And obviously, if one doesn't happen, the other doesn't happen. So you just never know. And Scadabo was having another excellent game. Just to touch on him for a brief second, I've been not so much critical, but I've tempered excitement on him in terms of how high and low he was allowing himself get, and just wondering how much he could live on those highs. But there's absolutely no doubting that he's been one of the most exciting breaths of fresh air in the league this year, himself and Jackson Dart, and the chemistry that they've developed. And it's gutting to see the likes of him going off, knowing that we won't see him again this season. And I suffered, unfortunately, a very similar injury a couple of years ago. And there's more than blood running through his veins. He's pure testosterone, because I'll tell you, when he was sitting up, that's certainly not what I was doing when I was rolling around the field, waiting for an ambulance, because that was a gruesome, incredibly painful thing to happen. And you just wish him all the best. And it's sickening for Giants fans who okay, they haven't had much to be hopeful about this season or happy about, but certainly the arrival of Scadabo has been a fantastic watch. It's been box office himself and Dart, and it's gutting. But yeah, look, I agree with you on the tush push. It was a fumble, clear as day, and fair enough, the referees jumped the gun, but blowing the whistle didn't affect what happened on the field of play. And once that was reviewed, they should have seen the ball came out. The ball came out milliseconds after, or even as the whistle was being blown. And as you said, if you're going to allow a play that's been so controversial, you have to call it right, and it's been reffed incorrectly in so many different ways. False starts, not withholding as well. That they've been allowing false starts all season long. And look, we can go back and forth on the tush push, and we will probably in the off season. But I've said it, like I said it to you guys last night. Can you ban a rule just because it gives a team an unfair advantage? Go ask Mel Blunt. I mean, the Mel Blunt rule was simply brought in because he was checking fellas at the line of scrimmage. He was so strong and physical in the 70s that the receivers couldn't get down the field. So they just changed the rule to free up the receivers. If it's boring, if it's controversial, if it's all we're talking about after the fact, just get rid of it.
Kieran, Boyle, there's lots else to talk about after the fact as well. I mean, you really look like you got something in Jackson Dart in New York, but the help around him is just dwindling. I mean, the bright spots coming into the season, Malik Neighbours, emergence of Cam Scadaboo, both gone now. Yeah, some flashes on defense, and Brian Burns is still Brian Burns, and there are bits and pieces there, but it's a very frustrating experience at this stage.
Oh, extremely, and it ruins your watching experience. It takes away from the entertainment for even neutral fans. Like Kieran said, he's a firebrand. I'm glad you didn't ask me about the tush push, because I might not have been able to control myself or even comport myself with any kind of dignity. But yeah, it's another brutal loss, and you start to think did Mara, did he make a deal with the devil or something? Because ever since the Super Bowl, this team has been awful. I mean, we haven't won in Philadelphia in, I think it's 12 years in running now. Pretty similar with Dallas. We've got an odd win here or there, but losing somebody like Scadabo, it kills the energy. You saw what Dart's reaction was like. He's gutted and devastated. The whole team is. It took the air out of their performance. And it was always going to be a slog after that. I mean, they were in a daze, some of them, after losing, somebody like that who gives so much energy. But I mean, my only concern now is that Dart, I hope he stays healthy, and B, we have to get him weapons. The trade deadline is in about 7 days, I think. There has to be some sort of help given to him in a desperate attempt by Shane or Dable to get some help. I don't even care about furthering his progress right now because he's a rookie and he'll learn on the fly a lot of the times. But some sort of proven wide receiver that's out there, or a trade with somebody just to get somebody out there, because Wan'Dale Robinson, Theo Johnson, that's not going to do anybody any good, and it's not going to put any points. It's not going to put many points on the board. The Giants are reeling right now. I got my own personal opinions. I think it should be a fire sale because half the team right now is just losing is in their DNA. Players like Dexter Lawrence are shadows of what they've been in the past. I think now's the time to start getting rid of some people and start building up some draft stock. Shane and Dable won't be there after this year. There's been too many gutting losses, too many disappointments. It's brutal to lose somebody like Scadabo, but the only thing I can say is that if it leads to somebody coming in that's going to help Dart out a little bit in the passing game, then if that's what it takes, then that can be some sort of silver lining. Everything about the game stunk yesterday. I couldn't even bring myself to watch the end of it. It was a terrible, typical Giants Sunday performance. So much promise, so much hope. Saquon bursts out for 65 to start the game, and after that, you're climbing uphill. But to me, I think the Giants, this is systematic at this stage. This starts at the very top and it goes all the way down. They've got a clean house. I don't care if they talk about wanting to keep continuity with coaches. They've got to start again. They've got to get some quality players in there. Injuries happen. We know this. Every team has had injuries this year, but it's just two injuries to two key players that have really taken the air out of the Giants season. And now, what could have been a respectable 7-10, maybe an 8-9 is probably going to end up with a 3-14 at best. I mean, the next 5 games for the Giants are brutal. They have the 49ers, then they have the NFC, most of the NFC North, and then the Pats. So Bears, Packers, and Lions in between that. So with the paucity of skill they have on the offensive side, and the defense is not being coached properly, I think it's just a clean house all the way around because nothing is improving in the short term.
Ah, yes, you're reminding me that we have the Bears Giants Utility Bowl to come up in a couple of weeks' time. That's one to look forward to before Steve Sarkisian is coaching your Giants this time next year. Kieran O'Donovan, you mentioned, or Kieran mentioned the Niners just there. They had a real letdown game against the Texans over the weekend, who look something like the Texans that we expected to see at the start of this season, and indeed at the start of last season. We've seen the Texans lean unexpectedly heavily on one of the league's best defenses, and that's certainly something that will please head coach D'Amico Ryans. What we hadn't seen is their offense find any sort of rhythm. That did click over the weekend, and they looked like the team that we would have hoped and expected them to be.
Yeah, and I have to apologize to the 49ers faithful. I called it last week. I said the minute I start picking the 49ers, they're going to slip, and that's exactly what happened. But yeah, I can't disagree with anything you've said, because there's been nothing wrong with the Texans defense, and all of a sudden the offense showed up, and CJ Stroud looked like rookie CJ Stroud. I mean, he was really on the money. I watched the highlights back, and I was just struck by the amount of the guys that were catching the ball. It's fellas I've never really said their names before. It's Xavier Hutchinson, Jalen Noel, Woody Marks, Braxton Berrios, Jaden Higgins. They're not household names. They're certainly not names I would have been overly familiar with. And they were really value for money. And as I said, CJ Stroud looked like he was.
Can I reference a great Steve Hansen line from the weekend on Red Zone? Woody Marks burst free at one stage, and they just cut to him on the clip, and quick as a light, like off the top of his head, Steve Hansen goes, "And there goes Woody Marks." But is anyone marking Woody?
Yeah, that's like a real Mihala Murahurti kind of on the spot moment.
That's
really,
exactly what I thought.
Yeah. Fair play to him. But on the other side of the ball, the only thing that was head scratching for me was the lack of use of, and maybe it's D'Amico Ryan's defense just wrapping up Christian McCaffrey, but I don't think he touched the ball in the first quarter of the game. Like his numbers were really low, having had a huge game the week before. He had 3 receptions for 43 yards. He was only targeted 6 times, and he had only 8 carries. I just can't wrap my head around that. And I know the game kind of got a little bit away from them, but even in their, when they were trying to mount a comeback in a have-to-have-it drive, he was the guy that they were targeting up and down the field. And you could say that was borderline garbage time. I mean, there was nothing wrong with his legs and nothing wrong with his ability to get open. So, look, it's just one thing that stood out to me. But play of the game there for me, and it might not have made a difference because it was a 2-score game. Was that interception by Kamari Lassiter at the end? It was a real class bit of coverage, and an excellent interception just to kill the game for the Texans. And yeah, I mean, I don't see the Texans in the long term. I don't see them catching the Colts the way the Colts are going. I don't see anybody catching the Colts at the moment. They're just an absolute freight train unless key players go down, which you hope will never be the case. But I mean, they'll say to themselves, if we can play like that every week, which we know we can. Why can't we be in the hunt for at least a wildcard spot? So look, Texans seem to be it's a step towards righting the ship, but they need to back it up again next week.
Kieran Boyle, I don't want to use an emotive phrase like dirty, cheating bastards, but I hope the NFL does look into the Ravens and their injury report shenanigans, where Lamar Jackson looked like he wasn't injured, then he was injured all of a sudden, and it clearly disrupted the Bears' preparation for this game and let the Ravens away with an undeserved win. That's all I have to say about it. But Baltimore is back in the party in the AFC North. Would have been only too delighted to see the Steelers slip up and the Bengals let that big lead slip, as we talked about earlier on, in a comeback win for the Jets. But it was a good day for Baltimore on both sides of the ball. Snoop Huntley did the business for them at quarterback and gave them a spark that they desperately needed. They got Roquan Smith back, and that made a big difference defensively for them against his former team. Baltimore stepped up when they needed to in what really was a must-win game.
Yes, and like you said, it was the Snoop Huntley game. I mean, nobody really thought up until the game was about to start if he was going to be playing or not. But then the Ravens suddenly realized, we got Derrick Henry out there. Let's give him the ball and let him run. And when you got a player like him, he's had probably a rough month. Really, his productivity's been way down. He's not been the player he has been. But a huge win for the Ravens. despite the fact that it's being at home. But they got those players we talked about last week who were out in the decimated injury list, bringing back Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton, and like you said, Roquan Smith. And that's, who knows if they're too far in a hole, but if they get Lamar back, even next week, if everything starts clicking again, November is the time when people start to cook. The first month, especially October, people are starting getting their stuff together. They're starting to figure out what's working and what's not. The Ravens, if they're just kind of in the background, I mean, no one's going to write them off until it's, the last week in December and they've got a really bad losing record. But I mean,
well, just looking at their schedule here now. So they've Dolphins up on Halloween. Then they play the Vikings, then they play the Browns, then they play the Jets, then the Bengals, and then they have a game against the Steelers. So it's in their hands.
Absolutely is. And what else is in their hands is Chicago kind of played into their hands. I mean, that's if I'm a Bears fan, and Connor, I'd be worried if I was you about Caleb Williams. I've tried to defend him. I've tried to talk him up. I've tried to, say
I've been worried, as the expression goes, about Caleb Williams. I saw nothing this weekend that made me anything other than concerned.
And the noise is getting louder. I mean, again, we've talked about Johnson coming in. That wasn't his guy. So is that going to be his guy in the future? I'd be very concerned if I was a Bears fan. The progression and the kind of the maturation in the quarterback right now, he's making the same errors. He's scrambling. His direction and his accuracy is a little off. Granted, he did give Odunze the ball a bunch of times for 114, I think it was. But I mean, that pick to Wiggins, of all places, thrown from the end zone to Wiggins, who was staring you down, that's unforgivable. And I don't want to call it a rookie mistake, but that's a rookie mistake. I mean, that was a huge impact on the game. I mean, the Bears outgained the Ravens, was 125 yards to 8 in the first quarter. I mean, the Ravens were nowhere to be found, and it was another case of, Ravens have missed the bus again. But the Bears, I mean, you just played into their hands. And when you give Henry the ball and let him kind of do what he needs to do, and then you've got a defense that's got a bunch of guys coming back that are fresh, that's a tough thing. But the Caleb Williams noise is going to get a little bit louder.
I still, and we've been seeing this pattern since the very first game of the season, and I think this is telling. Again, the Bears, the scripted portion of the offense, and the Bears have started the first quarter really well in every single game. And once it settles into the rhythm of the game, that seems to fall away. In other words, the more and more it's in Caleb Williams' hands and the less and less control Ben Johnson can exert over it, the more it trends in the wrong direction from a Chicago perspective. As you say, it's concerning watching the way he goes through his progression. He doesn't seem to be able to look off safeties, as you made the point with the Nate Wiggins turnover. Like he's clearly going to undercut that route. Why are you throwing it there? How could you not move him off if that was the look that you thought you had? They have been able to paper over the cracks a little bit because they've got the run game going, and that continued to be the case over the weekend. And DeAndre Swift looks like a player transformed and born into the role that Ben Johnson wants him to be able to play. We also mentioned defensively that they were over-reliant on turnovers. Bears have more turnovers than any other team in the league so far, but you can't rely on that to be the case every single week, to win the turnover battle every single week, to have multiple takeaways every week. And once that didn't happen against the Ravens, they were exposed. So Bears very much back in the pack at this stage. Not that I ever thought that they were anything otherwise, but that 4-game win streak was a little bit illusory, and the Ravens have shown it up for what it was.
And the other point I was going to make is the penalties. I mean, 11 penalties for 79 yards. That's a backbreaker. That's the stuff you got to be cleaning up in September, not into late October. So, I mean, listen, it's not panic stations yet for the Bears, but that's we all know how tough the NFC North is. You can't afford to be giving away games like that, and yeah, that's a tough one there.
Kieran O'Donovan, the Broncos played what Bo Nix described as their first complete game of the season, and it showed. I and several others of us thought that the Cowboys might make more of a game of this, and the Cowboys were rounded into the right sort of form, but defensive frailties exposed. Broncos have something in Harvey, that rookie running back, and J.K. Dobbins, the tandem with him, and they certainly have something in Bo Nix, who is really making a leap in year 2, and he wasn't exactly too far behind in year 1 either.
Yeah, I picked the Cowboys in this as well for the reasons you mentioned, because the Broncos offense hadn't been able to get going in the last couple of weeks, and they've dug in and they've hung on and they've won games. I thought that would only take them so far. And as long as their offense wasn't clicking, they weren't going to be able to consistently do that. But they showed up, as you said. Complete performance is the perfect way to put it. RJ Harvey with 2 touchdowns on the ground. Troy Franklin had a great game, 89 yards, but 2 touchdowns as well. I mean, Bo Nix just seemed to be able to get the ball around to everybody. He was spreading the love, and it was like a really, really, an awesome offensive performance. But I thought defensively as well. That pass rush led by Nick Benito was just, it was fantastic. It had Dak Prescott under pressure all night as well. Even though they only came away with 2 sacks, he was under pressure. And I kind of contrast the Cowboys this year to I was thinking back to the Rams last year, and the Rams with a highly potent offense. They went through a couple of weeks where they had a few stinkers on offense, and I remember watching Sean McVay and Matt Stafford being so grateful to their defense for bailing them out. They said, "Look, we didn't show up today, and our defense got the dirty victory for us." And like, this is the drum we've been beating all week. The Cowboys will be exciting on offense, and there's no issue with the Cowboys offensively. It's when they have a down day, who's going to bail them out? Because again, it was like 179 yards on the ground given up. I mean, where's this run defense that they were going to develop after the Micah Parsons trade? And we talk about that week on week, and it's like nothing is changing. There's just teams are just running the ball for fun. And the Cowboys, they're going to have to score 40 points, it seems, to even be in games. They scored 24. 24 should be able to, should keep you in a lot of games, but this was a hammering, and that's probably why the Cowboys are going to find themselves out of the running. They just can't play complementary football. They've got stars, and they're so exciting on offense. They just can't do it on the other side of the ball.
Kieran Boyle, how about them Cowboys?
Well, like Kieran, I picked them as well. But I mean, listen, they're nothing if not interesting and entertaining. They're always, every game they're in is fun, and it's not a snore fest. It looked pretty good from the Cowboys at the start. CeeDee Lamb was starting to cook. They got Javonte Williams, the ex-Bronco, involved. But it's just this entire package from the Broncos. The offense was struggling the last couple of weeks, and the defense was always obviously on point. But it's other guys that you may not hear about or know about that's helping this Broncos defense. I mean, you got people like Singleton, Riley Moss, players like this who are just out there making huge plays on the defense. Cowboys, I mean, this is the fifth time this year that they've scored,
never going to pass up an other guy's reference, by the way. I'm a peacock captain. You got to let me fly.
Yeah. But that's the thing. You look at the stat sheet, and, everyone's looking for Surtain and Hufanga and people like that. But, you got Riley Moss and you got Justin Strnad, people like that not heralded names, probably end up going to be Pro Bowlers at some stage. But it's everyone's helping out here. And, Nick's has got that, that strong run game with, the local kid from down here, RJ Harvey from UCF, just tearing it up. And Dobbins has been great too. I was a little concerned about Dobbins. I thought there might have been too many miles on the clock for him to be effective in the league, but he's been great. That's a great 1-2 punch on the ground, helping Bo Nix out a lot. And, we all know about Cortland Sutton and Franklin as well. It's rounding out nicely for the Broncos. Cowboys, I mean, they're always entertaining. I mean, what can you say? They put up points. They allow points. They haven't beaten the Broncos now. I know they've only played them about 8 times since then, but they haven't beaten the Broncos since the days of Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman. So it's an entertaining game from the Cowboys. Their secondary is absolutely decimated. They had third stringers and practice squad guys out there yesterday. It's ugly. I mean, you can throw on them, you can run on them. They got no answer. So, unless, like Kieran said, unless they're putting up, 30, 35, it's going to be a loss. But, hey, they're not going to be in the playoff shout, but you can be guaranteed, especially for days when, they're the only game in town, like Thanksgiving or a Sunday night game. You're going to get the ball thrown a lot. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. But, hey, they're going to score some touchdowns and be entertaining with it. And if we can throw some Jerry Jones sound bites in there, all the better. The Parsons loss has obviously been huge. A little bit of discussion today. I'm not sure how warranted it is that, due to Myles Garrett's phenomenal performance yesterday, he's kind of whistling in the dark. He's doing all the work there, but no one's going to see it because he's over in Cleveland. Little talk about maybe they move some pieces and pick up somebody like Myles Garrett. Not sure it's going to do anything for a playoff run, but that's he's a local guy from close to Arlington in Texas. Sales, Jerry loves his jersey sales and his merchandise. You put Garrett out there, and those jerseys will fly out the door. So something to look at, just because there's going to be a lot of frenzied activity in the next couple of days before the trade deadline. But bottom line, Dallas are great to watch. Broncos are starting to cook. We've won 5 straight now. I mean, that loss against the Colts seems a long time ago, and even that close loss at the Chargers too. I mean, they had 2 close losses early in the season, and they've been right at it now. I mean, 6-2 now. They're right where they want to be in that division, because the Chiefs are going to put up, a bunch of points tonight as well. So, Broncos getting nice and warm, and because it's going to get cold up there real soon.
Yeah, that is a good point. You think they are 2 walk-off field goals away from being 8-0 at this point, and they haven't always looked pretty doing it, but they're rounding into form now. At 6-2, they are atop the AFC West, and that's not going to change tonight, regardless of what happens in the Chiefs game. Chiefs 3rd in that division on 4-3, but we'll be looking to add a win and tie things up with the Chargers, who are a game ahead of them as it stands. Enjoy that game if you're going to watch it tonight at a slightly earlier time, a 1:15 midnight rather than a 1:15 with the clocks going back. So watch out for that one. We'll be back with you with our Thursday night football preview, and indeed our Thursday night week 9 preview show coming right at you on the Irish NFL Show.